In a stunning decision, the Supreme Court has struck down President Trump's Liberation Day tariff plan, dismantling a central pillar of his economic agenda. The ruling marks a major check on presidential authority, ending years of legal battles over whether a president can unilaterally impose sweeping tariffs by declaring a national emergency. The court concluded that Trump's actions overstepped the authority granted by Congress, setting a precedent that will constrain future presidents. For American companies, this is a long-awaited victory. For the White House, a stinging defeat that unravels a key policy. The decision forces a dramatic unwinding of tariffs that have defined U.S. trade for years, sending markets into turmoil and sparking intense political debate. President Trump's strategy, designed to punish countries like China and Mexico, is now invalidated, requiring a fundamental re-evaluation of America's trade approach. The immediate focus: a massive, complicated refund process for collected tariffs and a national conversation about the limits of executive power. The Supreme Court hasn't just struck down a policy, it's redrawn the boundaries of presidential power. Trump's Liberation Day tariffs were the centerpiece of his America First doctrine, targeting countries with large trade surpluses like China, Mexico, and Canada. The administration claimed tariffs would revive U.S. manufacturing and protect jobs by making foreign goods more expensive, encouraging Americans to buy domestic products. Trump invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, arguing that trade deficits were a national emergency, a legal stretch that bypassed Congress. The tariffs were framed as both economic leverage and patriotic crusade, with Trump touting them as a bonanza for America. Critics and economists countered that tariffs are taxes paid by U.S. importers, not foreign countries, and that costs would be passed to American consumers. The administration's expansive use of emergency powers became the central issue in court, with the legality and economic logic of the tariffs fiercely contested. Ultimately, the plan's promise of massive revenue and economic revival was undermined by its real-world impact on businesses and consumers. The Supreme Court's scrutiny would expose the flaws at the heart of this economic gamble. The legal battle was led by American businesses like Learning Resources and VOS Selections, who argued Trump's tariffs were an unconstitutional tax imposed without Congress. Plaintiffs claimed the International Emergency Economic Powers Act was never meant for trade deficits, but for genuine emergencies like national security threats. The administration's shifting justifications, publicly calling tariffs a revenue windfall, while in court insisting they were regulatory, undermined its case. Justices questioned whether a trade deficit could truly be an emergency, and highlighted the economic reality that tariffs function as taxes on Americans. The court ultimately ruled that Trump's use of IEPA was an unconstitutional overreach, reaffirming Congress's authority over taxation and trade. This decision delivered a powerful check on presidential power and set a new legal standard for future administrations. President Trump's response to the Supreme Court's decision was explosive, denouncing the ruling as a political attack and a betrayal of American workers. He accused the justices of siding with foreign interests and lacking economic understanding, fueling outrage among his supporters. Trump's rhetoric has deepened political divisions, with protests erupting and Republican lawmakers caught between defending the president and upholding judicial independence. By framing the defeat as a personal vendetta, Trump aims to rally his base and distract from the policy's legal and economic failures. Economists argue the tariffs harmed U.S. businesses and consumers, but Trump's narrative ensures political drama dominates the headlines. The president's attacks on the judiciary threaten public trust in democratic institutions and escalate the conflict between branches of government. This political firestorm promises a turbulent season ahead, with the balance of power in the American system now at the center of national debate. The Supreme Court's ruling has triggered a logistical nightmare. The Treasury must refund over $100 billion in tariffs to thousands of companies. The scale dwarfs any previous refund effort, with no clear timeline for payments and immense complexity in tracking and verifying claims. Most of the refunded money will go to importers, but economists note that consumers, who paid higher prices, won't see a dime. This has sparked public outrage, as corporations receive windfalls while ordinary Americans are left with the costs. Consumer advocates and political opponents are demanding answers, calling the process unfair and highlighting the disconnect between who paid and who benefits. The refund, meant to correct an illegal tax, now risks fueling further political discontent and scrutiny. Lawmakers face mounting pressure to address the inequities exposed by the refund process. The Supreme Court's decision has exposed the true nature of tariffs. They're attacks on Americans, not foreign exporters. Trump's claim that other countries paid the tariffs was debunked. U.S. importers paid and passed costs to consumers through higher prices. The result? American families paid more for everyday goods, with the burden falling hardest on lower and middle-income households. Tariffs also hurt U.S. manufacturers, who rely on imported components, raising their costs and making them less competitive. The policy, intended to spark a manufacturing boom, instead disadvantaged American businesses and contradicted its own goals. Polls showed most Americans opposed the tariffs, feeling the financial pinch in their daily lives. The court's ruling validated these concerns, forcing a national reckoning with the real costs of protectionist trade policies. The message is clear. When tariffs are imposed, it's the American people who pay the price. The Supreme Court's decision does more than end a single policy. It sets a precedent that curtails the president's power to wage trade wars unilaterally. By closing the IEEPA loophole, the court reasserts Congress's constitutional authority over trade and taxation. Future presidents will face stricter legal requirements and oversight before imposing tariffs, ensuring a more transparent process. This ruling is a victory for the separation of powers, pushing back against decades of congressional authority drifting to the executive branch. Lawmakers are now likely to be more assertive in guarding their constitutional duties and limiting emergency powers. The decision forces a shift toward a more structured, legally sound approach to trade policy. While political and economic disruption may follow, the long-term legacy is a stronger rule of law and reaffirmed constitutional checks and balances. Even in polarized times, the Constitution's safeguards remain a powerful force.